Men rising up to end the silence around us about the chains that bind us, to dispel the darkness of illusion with luminous spiritual technologies, to finally become the hero within us all. This is Arise, the Honest Man's podcast. My name is Karuna Avatar Das. With me, as per usual, is my dear co-host Jai Jagannath Prabhu, and we also have two very special and esteemed guests with us today. Ravinol Chambers, as well as his Grace Mahatma Prabhu. And we are going to be getting into a rather contentious, serious, controversial subject matter. We titled the current episode as When Tradition Becomes Our Nemesis, also exploring the theme of education and the very severe inequality that especially women in India face, and not having access to proper education. So this is kind of like the core essence of what we'll be exploring. And just to give a brief intro to our two esteemed guests, firstly, Mahatma Prabhu has been in the Krishna consciousness movement or the Bhakti tradition for almost half a decade, perhaps even half a decade. I mean, half a century.
Half a century.
I was also in half a decade as well. But half a century includes half a decade.
Right.
It's more than half a century, which God makes me feel like Grandfather Beechma or something. Anyway.
How many years exactly, Gurudev?
51 and oh my God. And I was initiated 51 years ago, sometime within, I'm not sure the date, but it was within the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
Sometime in March of 1970.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just under double my age. So
Well, don't worry, you'll also get older.
Yeah. Guaranteed.
Anyways, so Mahatma Prabhu has been with us in the Bhakti tradition since its very inception in the West. He has served in so many ways. In his younger years as a temple president, he became a temple president when he was 20. It was 21 years old, Gurudev, is that right?
20.
Yeah. And so, he was engaged in so many ways. That was a
crazy temple. You have a 20-year-old temple president, a devotee 8 months. It's like, we were fired up.
Yeah, but that certainly laid an incredible foundation for, your mastery as you've developed that later in life. And essentially all of the outreach missionary work that Mahatma Prabhu has done in his younger years has culminated now in his immense store of wisdom and realization across so many spectrums, helping people in so many different ways. He's established a company called Sattva, which is to be found at thesattvaway.com. And he develops seminars, workshops, online courses. And he's especially famous for guiding people in japa meditation, forgiveness, humility, relationships. Truly just such an expert individual and deeply, deeply realized. So we're very, very honored to have him. Thank you for joining us, Gurudev. And also I refer to him as Gurudev because he's my initiating spiritual master, just to put that out there as well. And then our dear Ravinol Prabhu, he is a multi-award winning Irish-born film director, focusing. I'm just gonna read this to do proper justice to it and not miss any details. So I'm gonna.
You can skip ahead.
No. We're going to do proper justice to it. So he's an Irish-born film director focusing on stories that cross boundaries and aim to connect us as humans at the deepest level. As a teenager in Dublin, he wanted to be a stockbroker. However, life was to take him on a very different journey. After studying a degree in psychology, he spent most of his 20s as a full-time Krishna monk, living and traveling in Ireland, Africa, India, as well as the UK. And then it was in Africa in 1995 that he first developed a passion for capturing authentic stories on camera, when working with street children and education. And then in 2009, after completing his MBA with a specialism in venture philanthropy, he started the award-winning production company, Be Inspired Films. And then Road to Vrindavan is his debut feature documentary. So yes, we are very much enlivened to have you with us, Ravinol Prabhu.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So I see we already have some very enthusiastic greetings from our audience, some of our stalwarts. Welcome, everyone. So just now, to kind of set the mood and get everyone into the bath of what we'll be discussing, themes coming from the film, we'll just be watching the latest version of the trailer of the film. And we're going to mention this a few times throughout the podcast, but I'm just going to say it now already. If you would like to watch the film, it's online, free until the end of the weekend. So you can just go to Ravi's Instagram, and in the bio of his Instagram, there is the link. So we'll also share his Instagram handle so that everyone can get that access. All right, so let's check out the trailer.
You have broken me all the way down upon my knees, and you have broken me all the way now. You'll be the last you'll see. And what chance had we got when you missed every shot for me? And in the morning when you're turning, I'll be out of reach, and you have broken me all the way down. You'll be the last you'll see. And some fights you gave when I pushed you away from me. And in the morning when you're turning, I'll be far to see. And in the darkness when you find this, I'll be far to see. And you have broken me all the way down. You'll be the last you'll see. You'll be the last. You'll be the last.
Noise. Okay, I guess we're going to get into the discussion here. Ravinol, we'd like to start with you. Specifically, although the trailer gives us some context, what was the documentary actually about? What inspired you to get into that particular subject matter and dedicate, I think you said 4 years of your life when you were unpacking that presentation? And probably the most important bit for us, or the feelings, or what happened to your sort of emotional landscape during that whole process?
Yeah.
So yeah, those three different questions. Sorry, I should maybe ask them one at a time.
Well, I'll try, keep me on track if I go off. Yeah, it's a very good question. To be very, very honest, I didn't choose it or seek it out. It came to me, you know, and I'm very grateful. It turned out to be a massive blessing in my life, to be very honest. But I got a phone call essentially from a friend who was related to the school in Vrindavan, the Sandipani Muni school. And he said he was doing this fundraising trip. And he said, would you like to come with me to drive 1,800 kilometers in these three-wheel tuk-tuks down the west coast of India? And he didn't tell me at first what it was about. And I was like, I'd love to do that. What a great adventure. It's so exciting. And I've been in India many times. And what a great way to see it as well, by road, you know, passing through all the different regions and so on. But then he told me we'd get to go to Vrindavan afterwards and visit this school. And you see, I'd spent almost a year in Vrindavan in 1997 doing the Bhakti Shastri. So I was studying, you know, the devotional books there. But I hadn't been back since. And so for me, I was thinking, wow, this is 20 years later in my life. My life looks very different now. But you know, it would be wonderful to go back. So I had some kind of a notion, like, you know, how will it be for me if I go back? You know, like time has moved on. But I also then understood that actually, because of the school, why is it a girls' school? It's because in many rural areas, and there are sort of cultural and traditional views and attitudes towards girls that mean that they're not so much encouraged to go into education. And even if they do start education, they don't generally stay in education too long. And we'll unpack some of those in a bit. And so I thought, well, instead of being from a faraway country, like we tend to inform our decisions about things just by reading headlines or by hearing about it second or third hand, I thought, well, why don't I actually, because I'd already been running a film company at this stage, why don't I take a film crew with me? And this will be a colorful travel kind of, you know, adventure, but also speak to ordinary people that we meet along the way to try to understand this. What are these challenges or barriers or prejudices, but from people in their own words, rather than, you know, deciding already what I thought about it. And that was the initial kind of idea. And and actually we came back, we did a trailer, and, you know, naturally people were encouraging, but I received a criticism, which at the time, if I'm honest, you asked about feelings, felt pretty rubbish, to be honest, because, but it turned into a blessing. It turned into a blessing because it forced me to really go much deeper, not just into the issue, but into my own sense of how all of this related to me. And the criticism was, why are you doing this as a man? Like, I guess the implication was, surely it's a woman's issue. And I thought about it, and I thought, wow, well, that kind of divisive thinking surely has to be part of the problem in the first place. And I reached out to people, because my work is, I work with so many different organizations around the world telling stories about positive change. I had a lot of contacts, and I reached out to them, and I shared what happened. And I said, this doesn't feel right to me. Surely, you know, the involving men in this conversation is important. And they all unanimously said, of course it is. And anybody you say it to, they go, yeah, it's a no-brainer. But in reality, though, it doesn't happen. And there are billions of pounds being put into girls' education, and very, very little money or conversation going into working with men or boys to help them change their mindsets that would facilitate that change. And so I went back, and, you know, the film took on a whole new dimension. And also my story, I guess, within it is an invitation to the viewer not to externalize these issues, but to see how do they relate to the viewer. How does it relate to you? So yeah, hopefully that gives a bit of context.
Nice. Mahatma Prabhu, we wanted to hear about your feelings about the movie, and that inspired you specifically to reach out to Ravinol. And then that led to Ravinol reaching out to Karuna Avatar, who then reached out to me. so that we could have this episode. So your feelings about the movie, your response to it is a pretty critical piece of how this episode just manifested literally on Tuesday, a few days ago.
And
So-
I
Yeah.
also I want to plug very briefly here that it was actually Shardiya Rasa Dasi, who is in charge of Bhakti Yoga London, who gave Ravinol Prabhu my number and set this whole thing in motion. So I also want to give some credit to her because she really played, if it wasn't for her, this wouldn't have happened.
100%. Yeah. Thank you to her.
I think about 2 years ago, I had to become a little bit involved with the female or the Vaishnavi Diksha Guru issue and the pros and cons and the lefts and rights of it. And what started to become obvious after being involved in that was not the issue. The issue was traditional versus, I don't want to say liberal, but I would just say adaptive.
Progressive.
And this was a manifestation of the issue. And I'm still been involved in it and keeping up on it. I have to because of a certain service I'm doing. And I become very aware of the traditional or more conservative points of view, maybe more aware than I have been in the past because I haven't needed to, especially like living in the West, you don't get much conservatism. Once you go to India, Eastern Europe, you see it more and you hear it more and you kind of sense that you may be a little out of place if you're too American there. Or they'll just tell you're too American. So when I was watching the film, I don't know how long into it, I started feeling a little uneasy. Not because I didn't like the film, and not because it didn't make sense. And like you said, when you told people, the man, it should really be a man's job. I was like, duh, of course. And I've had God sisters tell me that, we can't do what you men can do. You have to stand up for us because people don't listen to us as much as they listen to you. But I always take on the mindset of what I think the traditionalists are going to think. And so I'm watching this film, and basically what we're seeing is that this tradition of girls becoming married young and only being wives and giving up education at 12 is causing tremendous problems. So I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute. This is what's in our books. This is what it says. This is what Prabhupada is extolling, that this is the system. And then there's no divorce, no abortion, no boyfriend, girlfriend. And of course, I understand that. My daughter went to Gurukula in Mayapur. That's what she learned. She started at age 8, and they said, you're not going to choose a husband. Your parents will. That's what they learned. And she went through that, and now she's in America, and she says, I went through that system, but I'm not Eastern, I'm Western. That's who I am at the core, even though I've got that training. So it's kind of like, we understand that. You can't just change someone's culture who's unwilling and so forth. So, but I'm watching this film thinking, oh my God, the traditionalists are going to be shooting arrows at Ravi for what he's doing, because basically he's saying that the things that Prabhupada said to do in his books are creating all these problems. That's not what he's saying, but that's what it seems like he's saying, or could be understood. So then I thought, I have to write him and ask him, because I'm in anxiety watching the movie, thinking about that. And I have a daughter, right? And so, my daughter went to university. She's got she's got a car. She was going to university when she was 16 out of her own choice. And she had her own car at 16 driving to university, and she had just come back from Mayapur. At the same time, I watched her go through hell going to university. She didn't like it. I mean, she likes education, but the culture. So it's not like I'm necessarily on one side of the coin or the other, but it's just kind of this reality, which we all have to deal with, is that something is said in our books, and you read it and you go, if we did that, that would ruin everything. Although that is what is supposed to make everything perfect within another context. So then I said, I have to write him because this must be going through his mind. And I wanted to know, what were you feeling while you were doing this? Because this movie is like, education is important. It opens up opportunities materially that these girls will never get. And the context of modern society is that girls are exploited, et cetera, et cetera. As I say, they say, what does it mean to protect women? It means to protect them from car dealers and mechanics. That's what it means. So we know that, if there's enough men out there who will take advantage of women whenever they can. So that's why I originally contacted him. And then it kind of evolved in the discussion and said, then Ravi said, well, maybe we should actually discuss it publicly, because it's not just this issue of girls' education. It's the broader issue of tradition and how sometimes it backfires because of context, or, people are not qualified to actually live that tradition or even understand it in the first place. And then it's misapplied, and then you get all kinds of problems. And the traditionalists fight back like anything because they feel that you're criticizing the tradition when all you're saying things which to you are total common sense. I'm just saying, if you do this, it doesn't work. It worked, then, but it doesn't work now. And but still, they take it as an assault. So that was how this started. And that's what I wanted to ask Ravi. That's what I wanted him to talk about. And I thought, well, maybe we could have a discussion around that, because I'm sure what you're feeling, I just felt by watching the movie, because, especially we're so privileged in the West, and you see those girls and it's like, this is not fair. We come in, we got, 10, 20 times more things than we need. They hardly have, a few sorries or whatever. And we're saying, no, they should just be at home and not have these advantages. It seems kind of like hypocritical in a sense. So that's how it started.
Yes, probably.
I have a couple of thoughts that came up while you were speaking there. Thanks. Also, just to say, there's a danger, I think, for all of us to fall into this binary thinking, like it's either or. And especially I find the traditionalists, when they argue, it's like, well, if you do this, this will happen and everything will fall apart. And they'll always give you the most extreme, scary version of what will happen. You're like, well, it probably won't happen like that. But even if it does happen like that a bit, people are intelligent. People are always finding ways to figure things out, and to it's not like, it's a very fatalistic, disempowered view of everything, that, if we let go of this iron grip, then everything will fall apart, which I think is a false assumption. But also this idea that no abortion, no divorce, no boyfriends, in theory, right? That doesn't mean just by having that system. It's a very nostalgic, dreamy idea of some perfect utopian reality that probably doesn't really exist. And certainly it looks very, very far away from where we are today. And it's a sort of a single issue voter thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of the idea of a single issue voter so there's one thing that's so important to them that they'll overlook all the other terrible things about that candidate because of this one issue that they agree on. So they're hung up and obsessed about this idea of holding the family together. And of course, no one wants a society where the family's falling apart. But the point is that if on that one metric and on that one measurement, if that's how you measure everything, then it's very superficial, isn't it? Because if you look underneath that, you might have so many other metrics where people are miserable and suffering and all of these other things. But as long as the family stays together, we're looking good. You know what I mean? And it's just so, the other thing is it's not just about, education is not just about this. We as devotees, I think, are also, a bit obsessed about certain things. And so we can actually see beyond them. So like, for example, it's not just about material progress either, education. That's just one small component of it. It's not just about academics or just about earning more money, or although all of those things are certainly benefits that come. But for me, what I found is so much more than that. It's for an individual, whoever you are, in this instance, we're talking about these girls, it gives you a sense of confidence in your own awareness of the world, your own interaction with the world, your own understanding of the world, your own voice, to be able to know when to say no to things if you feel they're harmful to you, to be able to take part in conversations, whether that's in the family or the community, and to be appreciated for your ideas and your thoughts. That is a huge thing for the individual. which is probably the most valuable thing, because you can make more informed and better decisions which affect you and your family. And in the instances of a lot of these girls, and I think it's the danger with that sort of kind of a cookie cutter approach to, you know, everyone in society, this is your box, that's your box, don't step outside your box, this is your limitations. It's a very limiting view of everything. And it's also a presumption that it's very fixed, it's very rigid, it's very inflexible. And it's also, we have to ask ourselves, like, whoever it is, we're making decisions for someone else. And so these girls would often express that no one, particularly one group of girls in Kochugao, in that village, where they did a census of the girls in the village, and they asked them about their concerns, their fears, their worries, their aspirations, their dreams. No one had ever asked any of them anything about how they feel about their life or anything else, and probably never would have either. And so they developed this great sense of understanding and appreciation that actually they shared many similarities, both in their aspirations and also in their concerns for their safety and for different things. And they developed this real camaraderie, and then they became what they said was, you know, they weren't invisible anymore. They had a place within the community, and they would do dramas to the whole village and do dramas that depicted the challenges that they face and use comedy. And then even everyone would be laughing because they could see the truth. And we know that through comedy, right? We can say some really on the nose things through comedy that everyone bursts out laughing. Why do we burst out uncontrollably laughing? Because we know that they're so true, but no one never normally talks about them. And so that sort of release of laughter is because it's like, whoa, that's so real, you know? And so can you imagine, like, and if a girl does speak out, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, why should I listen to you? You're not even educated. How could you even have anything of value to say? So it's very complex, but you know, and we love, I think we love it even more as devotees, but the world loves very binary, simple things, like it's black or white, it's good or bad, it's in or it's out or whatever. I think that's just incredibly lazy and actually potentially very dangerous.
You know, for me, I don't, Mahatma Prabhu, I want to give you a chance to respond to this also. But for me, just getting into the movie itself, the first thing that came up for me is, how are we defining education? That was really the first thing that came up for me, because when you look at, like, let's say the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is defining education as humility and pridelessness, et cetera, and then at the end of that long list, he says, aside from these 20 items, you know, everything else is ignorance. You know, so you get like a very strong definition of education like that, which makes sense to me. It's like the inculcation of a value system into the psyche of a person. And it seems to me, if that inculcation does take place, the sort of problems that we were seeing in the movie or in the world today wouldn't be as acute as they are. In other words, they seem to be acute because this sort of education is not inculcated. And the sense that I got from the movie, not that this was your intention, but the sense that I get when I hear the word, I'll be honest with you, the word education triggers me since 2020, because 2020 was a year where everyone was using that word way too much, specifically to other political issues that were going on in America. You need to be educated. You need to be educated. And I was getting really triggered by that. And in the way that I was hearing the word education at that time was that, well, you need to know like this very niche sort of thing about some topic that isn't really part of my life. And when I think of, and so education in that sense has like more of an academic feel or more of an informational feel to it. It's not about qualities at that point. It's about knowing something specific, or perhaps extending to the extent of like learning some skill or becoming competent in some particular skill. But to quote a C.S. Lewis statement that I've always appreciated, he says, education without values, as useful as it is, seems rather to make a more clever devil. And so that's kind of my I guess the first impact that I had watching the movie. Like, okay, how are we defining education? One more thing, toward the end of the movie, I think you were interviewing this lady in Mumbai. It was like by the like, it felt like it was on a highway where you were doing the interview.
Supreet, yeah, from Safe City, yeah.
Yeah, and she was saying that we need to be educated in respect. she was speaking about specifically how men should be educated. They need to be educated in respect and consent. And then she kind of gave like a long list of qualities. And I was like, hey, that sounds like what Krishna was talking about in Bhagavad Gita. So is education as it's normally thought of in the contemporary world failing because it's divorced largely from the cultivation of the inner world of the individual? I mean, I went through school. They didn't care about my inner life whatsoever if I were learning because that was the responsibility of someone else, even though I'm spending 8 hours of my time in school. So anyway, my question is simple, but I wanted to give a full context of one of the first struggles I had when watching the movie. Like, how are we defining education here? And if we were defining education in the sense that, let's say, Christians defining, would these problems really be as acute? Like, would I really be disrespectful to any woman, for example, if I was really having those values instilled in me? So that's kind of where I'm gonna start there also. Mama, I also want to give you a chance to respond to Ravinol's, problem with binary thinking, which I absolutely agree with and so on. But this was like very visceral for me. Like, what is education? What are we talking about here?
Well, I have some thoughts, but I'll pass back to Mahatma Prabhu first.
No, you answer this question, because I was thinking. Well, I was thinking when I was watching the film, I could see kind of like the before and after of those girls, right? Like, if they didn't go to this school, what would they be doing? I think you portrayed that. This is the fate of their sisters.
Oh no.
Sisters, let's say, learning language. If you learn to read, you kind of open up a universe for yourself, right?
I agree.
You could open up a good universe or a bad.
Oh man, we're losing you a little bit, Mama.
I think those are some obvious differences of, you can read, there's books, you can learn to write, express yourself. You like you were
Oh no.
saying, and get into cultures, girls are like taught, don't think, we'll think for you, Like, you can't even vote before 1930 in America, because why should you vote? Because you don't know how to think. We would just tell you how to vote.
Gurudev, we're losing you a little. The connection. The connection is a little.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why. Should I go off and come back? Or?
I don't know.
Possibly.
Maybe
I can start responding because I picked up pretty much what you were saying.
That's just internet up. Should I?
Maybe.
Tell me what you missed.
There's two ways of approaching it. Either someone in the house may be streaming something, so the internet usage could be too high all over, or maybe you could leave briefly and just come back right back in. We can see if that's
a separate line. I'm on a separate.
Okay.
I think perhaps leave and come back. If I think that sometimes might reset it.
Maybe
we'll
the neighbor.
See you in a minute. But I think I picked up pretty much what you were saying. So, and it's along the lines of what I was thinking as well, which is, and Jagannath Prabhu, I hear you 100%, and I think full kudos to you for acknowledging that it triggers you. So that's like taking responsibility for how it affected you personally. I think that it's, I had another devotee, a very well-meaning devotee, message me, and he's a nice devotee. And he said, I could get behind girls' education if they had spiritual education. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you how that affected me. Mm-hmm. I thought to myself, who the hell are you that you think that you can decide on whether these girls get education, or what are the criteria or the conditions for them getting education? Mm. That's a separate issue. So it's like if you have a sandwich, you have a piece of bread, you have some butter, you have some jam. They're all different layers. You can't say, oh, unless you're going to have jam in that sandwich, you can't have anything to eat at all. Mm. It's kind of a crazy way of thinking, I think. So we can always add on spiritual dimensions to everything, but it doesn't have to be a condition of somebody getting what essentially is a human right, So, for example, like Mahatma Prabhu said, if you can read and write, then you can also read spiritual books. Mm. If you can't read or write, you can't read any book. So so it's a thing of like, also I believe very strongly in people, we people also have free will. Ultimately, whatever they want to do is up to them, and we have no business in one sense deciding what it is. Of course, we can encourage them to be interested in spiritual topics, and we should. But the film is about, it isn't about everything in the world, or about, it's not trying to give a panacea for all of life's problems or a complete solution to the meaning or of existence. It's not what it's about. It's just about this particular thing, which is that that they deserve the right to education, and that will give them certain benefits. And of course, they will still be left with all of the bigger existential challenges that we all face. There's no question about that. But this one small component can certainly is one building block in a much bigger picture that can be helpful to them.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I wasn't thinking about education as I was describing it in terms of like spirituality.
Okay.
The language that's used in those verses of the Gita mostly pertain to character building and character foundation. And so that's how I was thinking about education. For me, it wasn't like a spiritual or existential issue. It's a human character development issue. And I'm just recalling my own education through school. That part wasn't there. So I was trying to make a discernment. When I say I was triggered, triggered means in the sense I was trying to see what is the distinction being made. Is it just academic? Because that part, it maybe helps to some degree, but if you have really bad character, it doesn't really help that much.
Definitely.
If it means character, then I would have to say in my own life, I was educated largely by my mother. And I went to academy also and I got something. I joined the ashram when I was 18, so I didn't get a whole lot, but I got something. But my education came from my mother, so that's what I was trying to make. Sort of a distinction there.
And I agree with you completely. And certainly, I mentioned it. Maybe it isn't crystal clear in the film, but and for me, very much so. Education is the primary thing. Is not the academics or the going and getting a job. Those may be other byproducts. That's not what it is for me. As I mentioned earlier, it's about developing a sense of one's own capabilities or tools to understand and interface with the world. And Zia, who's in the film, Malala's father. He, I interviewed him on my own podcast, him and his son, which will come out soon. The podcast is called Evolving Door, and he made that very same point. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that education must be also an education of values, respect, compassion, understanding of the otherness of others, and all of those things are an essential part of education. But it's a little bit back to, so there is a risk for sure in international development or all of these. So there's a little bit of a cheerleader feel or a euphoria feel. All we need to do is educate girls, and this much GDP will increase, and this will change, and that will change. And for sure, those are all elements of the thing. But my point was that it's very naive and foolish, but we're always looking for it. We're looking for the panacea, the pill. Give me the one thing. I can just do this, and then everything will be fixed. And I think devotees fall into that category as well. And I think that what I've discovered in the documentaries is that, no, just educating girls, certainly a component is character. But if you don't educate the men and the boys to adjust their mindsets that have for a long time held girls back, then actually just educating girls on its own won't necessarily be the solution. And it might cause kickback by these men because they feel threatened and so on. And actually the situation could end up being worse. So that was another factor.
Nice.
There's
Mahatma Prabhu, are you back with us? Can you hear us?
My connection is not good.
We've noticed.
Do we come through okay?
You probably don't hear everything I'm saying. Also,
can I ask what browser you're on, just out of curiosity?
Google.
Is it Chrome? Yeah, because Chrome is designed for StreamYard. If it's Chrome, it should be good.
It's just the internet connection it decides how it feels.
Okay.
It's still not happy. At any moment, it could feel better and just speed up again. And there's no telling why. Anyway,
It's
Okay.
working,
Can you hear
working
me?
right now if you want to go for it.
Krishna,
And
if it is your desire, please
I want to.
make sure that Mahatma Prabhu has decent connection right now. And let
Ravi, I want
Oh, Krishna.
to hear from you. Because you had to make decisions. You had to make decisions in the film that we're going to say certain things, and how your experience was affecting the feedback that you don't want to get, or miscommunication if you say something or show something. Those kinds of things. I was curious.
Well, I can say something about that. I mean, to some extent, I definitely, I mean, for me, the most important thing is to be completely authentic, and because I feel like if I'm completely authentic, I'm not saying I'm always going to get it right or not, but the thing is I can stand by that 100%, because it's totally real and true for me. And I think it's very dangerous. And I think as devotees, we do it a lot. We get caught up in intellectual exercises or trying to think about what's the this or the that or the other, and so I just wanted to be completely honest about the whole experience for me. And I'm going to say something which might seem, I don't know how people will take it, but like when Jai Jagannath Prabhu was reading out, Krishna says these are this, that, and the other. That's all great, and it's that's wonderful. But the thing is if I read something like that, and some of those things, like some people may take comfort or whatever in thinking that, my experience or the things that I also think are important relate to that or correlate with that. So the thing is that I was very fortunate. Something that I have to remind myself is that I spent 7 years like completely and utterly and totally immersed in studying all of these things and living them to the nth degree as much as I could. And so there's a deep imprint of it in me. And I know we talk about grace and, ultimately that here, but by the grace of God go I. And so, of course, we never want to lose that grace. But at the same time, I'm not afraid, I'm not going to allow that fear to stop me from really questioning and pursuing how I actually understand it, like what I really think about it, and so it's more about what do I really think about it, and then I'll decide. I'll sit back and see if it correlates or not. You know what I mean? And so if you were to read out those questions, like I would say, yes, it's wonderful that Krishna says all those things, but they're true anyway, whether we read that book or not. They're true anyway because we can see them for real. So they're not true because it says them in that book to me. They're true because we can see them, and then that's also nice, so I just think that part of this whole experience for me has been, there's one thing I changed, and it was more so because I did it because of my own decision. But there's a bit at the end where I said, that we should question these things about what we really think about them and not just accept them because they're tradition, culture. And originally in what I'd said was and philosophy. And the reason why I took that out, I reflected on it, was because I just said it in the moment when the person was interviewing me. But actually, I didn't believe that. I do not believe that philosophically that these ideas, that these sort of behaviors are a part of our philosophy. But I do think they're cultural and traditional. So that was something that I took out, but not because I was afraid of what anyone would think, but just because I didn't believe it. I didn't think it was true. And in all honesty, at the end of the day, this is how I see it. Like, we all have to grow up as devotees or whoever. Like, we're the ones living our own lives. So we have to take the complete responsibility and hands on the wheel for that. And so in one respect, I don't mean it in any way disrespectfully, but I don't really care what anyone thinks about anything, because and that is not completely true, because obviously people that I respect, I will talk to them about it, and I will be always willing to change my perspective at any moment if I really feel that actually, it's a fair point. Or so I'm very open. But at the same time, I will never feel like how I think about things for any fear of, or for trying to conform or whatever, because I think those things, as much as they may contain, or they're supposed to, whatever, but they also, I feel, cripple a lot of our potential in terms of how we can understand things. It's not that we're necessarily moving away, but it actually, in order to go deeper into something, sometimes you have to be able to step away from it and not just read off the script, So anyway, that's just a few thoughts.
Very nice. I absolutely agree with that, just because our literatures themselves also indicate that when you look at the scriptures, it's always a sort of dialectic between adepts and questioning thing and pushing the question further and deeper, and so that you can really step into an embodied understanding and not just a theoretical one. So I think that just stands absolutely true for how our literatures present themselves also. Mahatma, I don't know if you're back. I'm just trying to hold space until you can, until you can come.
I'm in and out, I think, because I'm hearing you guys in and out. Maybe I'll reboot.
Okay, yeah, try that. I'll try to. We'll do our best to hold space until your return.
Okay.
Another thing that came up for me watching your film, and also from some of the voice notes that we were hearing this morning that we're going back from, voice notes are fun.
I love them.
One thing that came up for me also that time is just like the contention gets to be like tradition versus like a more progressive understanding, or let's use the word adaptive also, which Mahatma used earlier, which I kind of like. For me, I've always felt like I don't really understand what the tradition is. And I feel like the tradition gets like all this bad rap, but what's actually getting the bad rap is our understanding or likely misunderstanding of tradition and not the tradition itself. Just like people may superimpose their wrong understanding of, let's say, God onto Krishna, and so they dismiss it. But what they're dismissing is their own misunderstanding and not maybe Krishna proper. So I feel the same way with tradition. Like, okay, we hear about Varnashram, and like at least in the literatures that we study, Varnashram is like a sidebar conversation, and it's literally just kind of creating a social context for the main topic that's being explored, which is like pure bhakti, for example. And so we're trying to pick up understanding of a social world from this like peripheral discussions and the books that we tend to engage with. And so we're not really getting the fully evolved understanding of what that tradition is. And then we're dismissing that not fully evolved understanding of tradition. And then you brought this up in one of your voice notes when talking about a more sensitive subject matter, which we're not going to bring up on here, but you know the one that I'm thinking about. And you brought up colonialism in that particular regard, and people having sort of a colonial understanding. And I was wondering, like, maybe the tradition that we're dismissing is a tradition that's infected with 200 years of British colonialism, or it's infected with 800 years of Islamic, whatever mixing that was going on. And so what we're getting is not tradition proper as it's manifested in these cultures that we're seeing now in your movie, which, is just really ghastly, but you're getting some like sort of distorted understanding. And so I don't know, what are your thoughts about that? Because I feel like tradition, at least for my generation, we're a little bit younger than you, and the generations after us, I think we like jump on the bandwagon of progressivism too quickly. Not that we shouldn't be progressive or adaptive. We must be progressive or adaptive. But if you're going to try to change something, you should understand how it works. Like, what is it about it that works? And what is it about it that brings order to the chaos in society? And then you see these parts aren't working, like change it. But I feel like our generation, we just like
change, and we get really excited about that part without understanding it. So I was curious about your thoughts on this.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very good point. It's sort of towards the middle of the film, I kind of, there's a couple of lines which addresses that. And so I became very aware of the tension between, let's call it, tradition and progress. And I'm not more for one than the other at all. Like, so I'm not, I don't have a position or I don't like these things of liberal or conservative or whatever. I just think they're too simplistic, and they're just about taking camps and all the rest of it. For me, it's about what works. Right. It's plain and simple, So it's an academic thing, perhaps as an academic exercise, we could talk about what is the real tradition and this and that and the other, and that's all great. But at the end of the day, we can see what's right in front of us. Right, that's the reality in practice, right, and that's what we need to deal with, because that is essentially the reality, in the moment. And yeah, if we want to, and I'm not saying there's no merit in trying to dissect, where's the fault or the blame or whatever, but we get into that mindset, especially when we're trying to defend something. I've got nothing to attack or nothing to defend. I'm just simply observing what is there. I hope it's clear in the film, like I didn't go for any sensationalism. There's no blame game. I'm trying to understand it from all different people's perspectives. There's no, it's not saying that Indian culture is bad. It's none of those things. It's just simply, that's what a documentary is. You observe something and you just document it. And so I think you're very, very right. I also, one of the guys I talked to, Annie Ruda, up on that water tower.
Yeah, I really liked that interview. It was kind of funny. It made me laugh, like the way he was.
He's a funny character, that guy as well. Yeah, we met him through the Facebook group, and so he was first of all going, like you, a little bit like you described. He was like, everything has to go. Right. And then I was like, so you don't think there's anything good with tradition? And he was like, no. There's good things about tradition. Right. So it's that thing, isn't it? So there's of course tremendously valuable wisdom in tradition, and we also should be careful as we move forwards that we don't just embrace everything because it's new or it's different or it's progressive or whatever. But that's the point, though, that it needs discernment at every step. But it equally means that as much as we shouldn't be just accepting everything, we shouldn't be just holding on to everything from the past just because, just because it's written in a book or just because of whatever reason, if ultimately it is not working. Even whether it's the application or the misapplication or the misunderstanding, whatever that may be. The thing that's so scary, if I'm honest, is like that often things that are hurting people are being presented in the name of tradition or culture, and therefore often of God, and therefore people are afraid to challenge them. Somebody gave an incredible example recently. It was Lakshmi Woodham, actually, but she said this idea of someone is essentially, from your experience, hurting you with a weapon. That's your experience. But in their mind, they're holding out a bunch of flowers to you. Then how do you navigate that situation? They don't believe they have a weapon in their hand. They don't believe they're hurting you, but they are, because that's the reality of your experience. And they think they've got a bunch of flowers they're giving you. So that's where in that, Venn diagram middle bit, that is actually like a recipe for, that's worrying, I think. And that's perhaps, go on.
Sorry, I just finished that last point, Prabhu.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to let's hear from Abba, Prabhu.
I just wanted to see if Gurudev is actually with us now.
I think he is.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you able to? Sorry, Mahatma Prabhu, are you able to tether your device to your phone?
I can speak a few words. You can tell me if you can hear me. That's probably going to be worse.
Okay.
We can hear some words coming in.
Good. Try. Can you hear me at all?
Kind of.
Because the phone data it's the same connection. It's the same connection.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Can I just pick up on a small point that Kamania Devi says, is the film not more
They could
specifically
be doing work on the tower.
is the film not more specifically about the misapplication, misunderstanding of traditional India and how that impacts our movement? With all respects, it's got nothing to do with our movement.
Right.
The film has got
Right.
nothing to do with that. So this is interesting. The film is a film about what it's about. And we can certainly have a conversation about this. And it's great that we're having this conversation. So, you know, and maybe that amazes people that like someone who's a devotee would have an interest in studying or thinking about something that isn't just totally like Krishna, Krishna. You know, it's like, you know, it's like, so no disrespect, because I know Kamini Devi is very lovely. She's had some exchanges with me, so I'm not disrespecting the question, but I just feel like, you know, sometimes you just need to be able to discuss something for what it is.
Yeah.
And just leave it alone. Like, just that's what it is. And then you can, if you, as another layer, bring in these other discussions or considerations.
Yes. Yes. I just, at this point, there's been so much, at this moment in time, I'm feeling like a kind of a tightness in my stomach, because I feel like there is so much to this. And there is just so much to this. And I want to bring it exactly to what you're saying, Ravi Prabhu, that this film is about the fact that there are literally millions of girls and young women in India who are practically being treated like a subhuman species, who are not having any opportunity whatsoever to express their inner world and their experience, and to gain the tools necessary to actually even be able to do that very thing in the first place, with, you know, with skill and with conviction. And that is a really, really painful reality. And the thing is, it's like as I was watching the film, I was looking at them and thinking to myself, there is just so much more to life than this, and what they're able to experience through their circumstances and the imposition of culture, right? And it's really painful to see. So here I kind of just want to, you know, come to a point of like, if we're gonna be speaking about tradition and culture, like I would like to kind of equate. Can we even equate those two things with each other? And what I mean is that growing up, and especially coming to Krishna consciousness and then getting some perspective on Western culture, I kind of entered into a space of feeling like, what is even the value of culture if it's just kind of like an arbitrary collection of notions about how a particular group of people should and shouldn't act, right? And so, like, to what extent does it actually contribute to someone's inherent well-being? And the fact of the matter is that the way that culture and tradition is being interpreted and applied in India, you know, in relation to women and their education and progress in life, is that it is inflicting so much damage. And it's really, really, really problematic. But then what gets to me about it is that, okay, we're gonna make, and this is also part of what the film aims to achieve, I believe, which is that we're gonna try and do something about this. We're gonna try and create resources and facilities and opportunity for women to gain better access to education, which they should totally have. You know, like that's just so clearly obvious from watching the film. But then you kind of come to this systemic issue, which is much broader and much more complex and much more, it's so vast, you know, and that is that giving women education and helping them to develop in this way is only going to take them that far if the broader society and the system within which they are couched does not actually receive and respect and facilitate that education to come to its fruition, right? And so then, this is also a point that you made, that men's education also is of critical importance, because if men are not educated to respect women properly, then what is really actually ultimately gonna come of it? And this is just something that I also just want to relate to, two things, is that we're a bunch of men presenting this episode, right? And like, someone could have the criticism, this is a woman's issue, so why are there a bunch of men and guys talking about it? But as you said also, like, that kind of approach is so, it's so narrow-minded, because you cannot divorce men's issues from women's issues. It's like they fully play into each other. You can't say, like, us talking about it is of essential importance. If we don't talk about it, like, then it might as well not be spoken about at all.
Yeah.
Did you get all of that, Ravinol? That was a lot.
I did. I got all of that. Yeah, I got all of that. That was a lot. Thank you for that. I'll have a go. So there's a couple of things that came up for me. First of all, yeah, I mean, you can't divorce men and women from each other. We live in families, communities, and actually, yet at the same time, we can acknowledge there are a lot of tensions between men and women, probably because of the attraction. So it's like a battery, you turn it on one end, it pulls, you turn it round, it repulses, right? It's a powerful force we're talking about here. And so in one sense, you could almost argue just as much as adding spiritual elements to one's life, that actually learning about healthy, balanced, healthy attachment within relationships between men and women would also go a long way to helping our society, like the bigger society. Because when it's not, when it's dysfunctional, or it's, in the extremes, it's really troublesome and massively. So also the idea, I really dislike the conversation around Western, Eastern, all of that stuff, because it's just, again, a very simplistic way of looking at everything. And so this idea of respect for women, that's not an Eastern idea or a Western idea. It's just an idea, and it makes really good sense. It doesn't really matter where you're from or what your books you read or what tradition you're in. And actually, what I found very interesting, sometimes people get so hung up about this when you talk to men, usually men in the West. There we go, I said it. About equality. They say, well, surely you mean equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. And you're like, yeah, I do. But like, why are we so uptight about it? Like, we're just, so it's, but I think me and my wife have talked about it many times, and I feel like we have to move beyond those intellectual understandings of what it is. And actually, when you have respect, you naturally have equality, because it's a byproduct, right? If I respect you, I'm mindful of you. I'm mindful of your situation. I'm aware of you. I take you into account in my thinking of how I do everything. And so therefore it's a natural byproduct. As well, the conservatives, I'm actually not, so I've been thinking about it recently, because we've had an overwhelmingly wonderful response to the film, but I've noticed how certain, conservatives like move in. I'm getting a lot of friend requests from these people who are obviously not in support of the film. I can see by their profiles, but they're moving in. And so I wanted to just analyze my own reactions to sort of sometimes their blatant sort of trying to tell me how it is, and other times more subtle. And I realized that actually they're afraid, and their fears I should not dismiss. I might not like their approach to how they deal with things, but actually their fears may be legitimate. So they have legitimate concerns, and that should not be discounted or not discussed. It's just how they choose to react to those fears. So it's a simple thing, isn't it? Girls may get mixed up with boys if they go out. Just keep them in. Simple, right? Sorted, easy. The problem is over. It doesn't take into account those girls or those individuals or how that affects them. And then the person can feel my fear is now gone. I'm satisfied. I'm not disturbed. So it's about my comfort rather than how it affects on other people. My wife always is into a thing called gentle parenting, and she's always telling our boys, if they get angry, it's okay to get angry, but you can't hit. So we don't say, oh, don't be angry, stop being angry, don't be. No, you can be angry. It's okay to be angry, but you're not allowed to hurt someone else, So that's the thing. It's like, so my point would be, yes, there are concerns and there are many challenging situations, but there's got to be a better way to approach or to deal with these things in such a way that it supports or it protects or helps or whatever, addresses the fear, but also does not hurt the individual in the process. And, the thing is like, we got to be honest. We're very quick and very proud to talk about the material world and the West and the divorces and the this and that and the other. I mean, my God, I think in our devotee communities, we probably have huge rates of divorce and diabolical attitudes towards women.
Yes.
We just have to see it. We can just see it. We don't need to. We see it.
Yes.
What do you mean by diabolical attitudes?
Just really derogatory. And the thing is it's in plain sight. We don't even, many people don't even think there's anything wrong with it.
Like an example.
Let me just think of an example off the top of my head. Well, just as one example, and it might be a subtle thing, but there was an exchange recently online. And one person said to this other lady, he referenced her as Mataji. And she said that she didn't like being called that. She didn't feel that she related to it. And also perhaps because in many times, I've seen this myself, it's used, I'm not making any comment on the original culture where it is meant out of genuine respect, but it's often used in a derogatory sense, right? So many of the script that we've been told, women are like children. They're less intelligent. They're lusty. They're inclined towards materialistic thinking. Blah blah. The list goes on, and all that just goes. You take it all in and absorb it. And so then on another thread, that same devotee and that same lady were on there, and this one devotee said, "Oh, we should just see all women as our mothers." And this senior devotee said, "Oh, they don't like being called that." Now, you might think that that's just a very small, tiny thing. But one of the other ladies said to her, who are they? It's a very dismissive sort of way. It doesn't demonstrate respect. Now, that's a tiny thing. There's probably much worse things, but that's just the only one that first came to my mind just right now. As if
I'm curious about that very particular example, because I saw that video, and a friend of mine sent me a little write-up, and I shared it on a write-up in favor of the Mataji term. And I wasn't actually advocating for it, because I'm like, I call people what they want to be called. But I thought his was also an interesting and good perspective. So I shared it. I said, and the way I shared it, I was very careful about my words. I said, I also appreciate this perspective. I don't exactly advocate for it, but I also appreciate it. And that was the most commented post that ever on my particular Facebook page. And a lot of the things that were coming up, similar to some of the discussion points in this conversation right now, was like, I grew up in a culture, like when I joined also, we grew up where we were told you call women Mataji. So in my head, it doesn't translate as derogatory or anything. It translates as me fitting the status quo of this particular environment. And, and certainly when I come to when I'm out hanging out in New York, I don't call women mother, because that's not in accord with the status quo of that community. But when I'm in the Hare Krishna community, I say mother, because that's how I was learned That's how I learned, or that's how I was socialized to fit the status quo of that community. And it wasn't until like recently for me, this could have been a long-term issue, but it wasn't recent for me until like the last 10 years that it seems like this was becoming like such a big issue. So then it occurred to me in the comment thread, I didn't comment too much in that thread. I just got out my popcorn and was enjoying the show. But I did comment a few times and I said, it seems to me what's happening is a clash of, again, to this point, like this tradition, not that it's a binary, but it was a clear clash going on between like a more adaptive or progressive values towards a more traditional one. And that was kind of at the heart of the issue. And it wasn't that someone was trying to be derogatory to the other, although I can see how it could be translated in that way.
But the point is that, that's quite a good example actually of tradition.
Yeah.
So we're not disputing the fact that the term can be very respectful, and it's probably intended to be very respectful. That's not up for, like, that's not what we're saying. What we're talking about is people's real life lived experience, where perhaps many times they have felt that it's been, and I've seen it myself, so I know I'm not talking out of just imagination here. It's in a very derogatory way. But the point is if you respect someone and they tell you that they don't like it,
right,
you don't ridicule them or make them feel stupid for that.
Right.
You say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean like that. Simple.
Right.
It's easy, isn't it? It's just simple. That's if there is respect. Anyway, just something also interesting. So Joanna says, why are we all men talking about women? There's no women, just another way to discriminate. So Joanna, this is my explanation, whether it may or may not satisfy you, but I think the thing is that it's the Honest Men's podcast. The two hosts are men. I happen to be a man who made this film, so I'm coming here to talk about it. And Mahatma Prabhu, I don't know if you were on at the beginning, reached out to me and and said we could have a conversation about it. So it's kind of just incidental that we're all men. We didn't think, and I'm not sure who we would have brought in specifically as a woman to join in the conversation, because it just happened that way. But I take your point. It's a fair point in a broader sense. But in this particular instance, it's just how it was.
We can do a follow-up episode. We had another touchy subject matter a few episodes ago called "Woman as Temptress, Mother, and Fortress," and we got one man scholar. We got him because of his scholarship, but not because he was a man. But we did a follow-up episode with a panel of ladies, so that we would be protected from this particular critique, which is a fair critique and it's not unfair. I do have this because we getting into this area of the question that you posed in the movie, which relates to this comment that's also coming up just now. Like, why are you doing this as a man? And I specifically, the way I'm hearing that in the movie is that we're being kind of called to action in a particular way, or perhaps, I don't know. I guess this is my question to you. Are you making a call to men in general, but let's say specifically in our community? Because that's where we're going to be able to have probably the most impact is in our actual community. Are you suggesting like a call to action for men in our community in terms of how we do things, particularly around this particular subject matter? Because in the West, like, I don't think I know any lady in America or Europe that has a problem with, let's say, education, for example. We all go to public schools. And so what is a call to action for us, or is there a call to action, or you just wanted to make us aware? And the reason I ask that is because there's a whole plethora of social issues that one can get. I mean, there's LGBT issues that I've been chastised for not getting into. There's issues around race that I've been chastised for not getting into. Now there's one around gender. Like, there are a plethora of issues that I can really involve myself in. So what is the call to action that this movie is intended for men? Just answering that question. Why are you doing this as a man? Yeah.
Well, to try and answer that, I didn't choose to do it as a man. I am a man. I can't help it. So there's not really anything I could do about that. And I'm also, I'm hoping that people will watch the film and be inspired to do whatever the hell they like. If I'm honest, I'm not telling them what to do or what they should think or what, I'm just trying to express some thoughts and also, I'm not trying to give a final conclusion or an answer. because I believe that the audience is intelligent, and if they come in contact with the questions and the issues, it's up to them. That's my point at the end of the day. I think we're often in this thing of tell me what to do, tell me what to think, tell me. It's like, I think that's ridiculous. It's like you can present the things in front of me, and then I have to decide what I. So I think I would hope that they would see some reason to want to think about this in their own lives. And also, as a man, I can only share how much of a wonderful transformational experience it has been for me. I sort of hinted it in the film, as a young, like I've been doing some press stuff recently, and the media, and they're saying to you, how were you thinking about women before and after? And I was going through it with my wife, and I was writing it down, and I had to almost ask myself and go, did I really believe this stuff? And I went, yes, I did, completely and totally and utterly, because at the time I didn't think about how it affected anybody else. I just took it on. There's so much stuff we took on, right? When we sort of take on such a huge step to take on all of the things that we learn, when we come, especially if we take that step to fully live as a monk, or as we say these days. Yeah, I feel like for me, the two best things I've done in my life, if I'm honest, outside my family, were becoming a devotee and making this film. I think they're the two balancing factors for me personally that have brought me into a place that I feel is right for me as a man, because it's like that. It's a very powerful thing, isn't it? So if you're heterosexual, those forces, they're the two massive forces in the universe. And so if that thing is your friend and is something that you can appreciate and genuinely respect, then it's not going to hurt you so much, is it? If it's this kind of nemesis, or this thing that's either going to pull you off your path, or it's going to do this, or it's going to do that, whatever it is, then you're always afraid of it. You're always in danger at every step for it, if you like. And ultimately, when men are not respectful towards women, it doesn't just hurt women, it hurts us, ourselves. So yeah, I've got two boys, and I feel like I want to bring them up in a way that they have a really healthy respect for girls and women from when they're young. And then, we don't have to it's like the movies you watch. It's like, oh, watch out for the boogeyman and all that kind of stuff. It's like, then, that imprints into you. Whereas if you go, no, actually, there is no boogeyman, and then, we can sort of model healthy relationships between men and women.
Okay, I want to press that a little bit more, but Corona, yeah.
Let's just see if Mahatma Prabhu is able to have any input here.
Looks frozen.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
That was pretty good.
And we lost.
Can you hear that?
No.
Oh, so you don't know what you're going to get from me.
Give it a go.
You have to tell me if I should continue or not.
Please give it a go.
Right now, it's looking okay.
I'll try. I'll say a few words, and then we'll see if they actually happen. In the context, or ask the question, how is this going to help the individual and the community move towards Krishna? Because that's a simple question. That is this good? And so, another question to ask, which I think is it makes things simpler, but maybe not so simple to answer always, is what would if Rupa Raghunath goes to Prabhupada and says, Prabhupada, we're doing this in Vrindavan for the girls. What's Prabhupada going to say? Oh, that's really bad. They should just stay at home and not get educated, because education just makes you a fool. I doubt he would say that. He would probably say, oh, they can help their village, their people, and help the world. That's what I would assume Prabhupada would say, because that's what he told devotees who were getting educated. Oh, stay in. Don't have like this conservative traditional. It's more like, well, what makes it good is that it helps the individual and it helps the community and helps the world. And said that, like, well, all you ladies who became devotees, I really feel bad that you went to college and got, educated. He never said that. Never said that to men or to women. We always said, use it. You're intelligent. Kind of strange that anybody would feel bad about the fact that those girls are being educated. It doesn't. There's not like there's no part of my brain where that I've tried to find a place in it, knowing what the alternative is. So I just find it interesting that some people would have a problem with it, and we know some people do. So what's the alternative? Anyway, was that understandable, or?
It's somewhat, yeah. I think we caught a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I say something small which relates to this? Thank you, Prabhu.
That joining the movement in 1969, I had never seen an Indian. I'd never been to India. I don't know anything Indian, this, that, and never conceptualized is. Devotees started going to India and then exporting back or importing back to America some Indian ideas, but it never took hold because we were in America. We were Americans. And I never got the impression that was the goal of ISKCON, that we're trying to create a different culture. And then recently I heard historical fact that no modern religious movement ever became successful. Not modern, no religious movement that is popular today ever became successful by changing the indigenous culture, by attempting to change the indigenous culture. When they did that, they always failed. So it's like, seems to be an impossibility in a certain sense, unless the whole world becomes Krishna conscious. Then naturally it's already changed. You don't have to change it. So I find these discussions very interesting because, culture is deeply rooted, and when you go to Italy, you're not going to see a lot of chapatis. You're going to see a lot of pizza. It's just a fact, isn't it? And you go to the UK, you're going to see a lot of curd. At least I see a lot of curd when I go there. So, and when you're talking about the Prabhu and the Mataji, I was thinking there's a plane that's going back to Godhead, and two devotees are like arguing Prabhu Mataji, and they miss the plane because of that argument. So I think a lot of our arguments are kind of like, what does it really matter? Because we could miss the plane by arguing about this. And as you said, Robbie, I always take the role. Well, I wasn't trained to call women Mataji, at least early on. That was like, huh? And people, you're supposed to call them Mataji. Huh? What? So, but like you said, is that what they want to be called? You're supposed to call them Mataji to respect them, but what if that disturbs them?
Exactly.
So, are we just following some ritual, or are we actually getting to the heart of what matters? So I think these are important things. And also I find it interesting, like pontificating on a situation like Vrindavan. You're not from Vrindavan, you're not married, you don't have kids, and you're throwing out your opinion, as many devotees do, about how we should be preaching. I'm like, great, that's your opinion. What have you done? Where are your results? Why don't we talk to the people who actually succeed? So I think, it's different. When you have a girl and she's growing up in this world and you're looking at the pros and cons, it's more real for you. Would you marry your daughter at 12? Probably not. Into a patriarchal family of men who are very macho. Would you do that? Probably not. And if you did, you would probably regret it. So, I think those kinds of, these, as Prabhupada so rightly said, armchair philosopher. I think a lot of us as devotees are like armchair philosophers. we're pontificating this, that, and they're like, well, have you actually done that? Or are you in that? What would you do? I gave 3-month lectures on death. Well, you die is no big thing. You're just like, yeah, so easy to talk about, right? Because I'm alive and not dying. So yeah. I think sometimes that's an issue.
Ravi, you want to respond to that or pick up something from that?
Well, it was something from earlier, but that was great. I'm glad we heard you, Mahatma Prabhu, there for a good stretch.
Yes.
That was nice. I just wanted to make a point that came up from me earlier is that it's again this thing of like where people go like 2 + 2 will equal 8. They always go to the most extreme thing. So if we educate girls, and we always presume it's the worst kind of education, and we all presume then they'll also all be eating hamburgers and running around nightclubs in miniskirts and all like that. We go to this really extreme version of things. And you have to understand, most people, they may, as young people, we all may make some things along the way, experimentation or whatever. But most people want good outcomes for their life, And as they're going along, they're especially if they have people around them that are not necessarily trying to control them, but you can sort of guide them and they can speak if there's an open and supportive environment. But what essentially I think one of the things that education does is it helps you to be involved in the conversation. So to have choice. So a lot of times in this old sort of idea that some people have about how it should be is that the girls, everything is decided for them. And they are not involved in any of that decision-making process. And so it may be, and this is an interesting thing I talk with my wife about quite a lot, even in the West, and this is something really important, it just so happens that this is that story is in the context of India. But these, to your point earlier, Jai Jagannath, it's not even really a film about education at all. It's a film about dynamics, and one of the ways in which this dynamic is exercised is through their limitation to education. But that's just in a way a detail. And all around the world, these systems are very much at play, just in different ways. And when you start to watch out for them, you can see them. And the point being that, like women, even in the West, there are different camps. Some people who are very much feel that in order to fulfill your potential, you must be going out to work. So then there's this idea that you're just a housewife, like as if somehow a woman that chooses to stay at home is somehow less of a fulfilled woman or whatever. And equally, if you're a stay-at-home or if you breastfeed or you don't breastfeed, like you're better or you're worse or you're this or you're that, or you're a more perfect mom or whatever. And so the point is about being able to make a choice. So you might, and you have to make the choice that's right for you, right? And so even with education, like my wife, she did a degree and then she went and did a master's in Cambridge and then she became a teacher for many years. But she chose, and together, it was very much her choice really, but I supported her, that to stay at home. My oldest son is 9 and the other one is 6. And it's only now that she's starting to go back to work part-time. She wanted to have all of that time at home to look after those boys. So it's this crazy idea that just because someone is educated that they're going to want to abandon their family and not look after their kids and all of this. It's just it's like the old Bollywood films, like where the bad guy comes in and he's hunchbacked and it's like, damn, damn, damn music. It's just such an unnuanced thing. And we're that's how we are. We still preach in that way. Like there's the perfect, Lord Ram, and then there's the demon, and there's nothing in between. There's everything in between.
Is there some truth to that though? Because this is not something I personally researched, but I have a lot of friends who would consider themselves conservative minded, and they would bring up stuff that kind of makes sense to me, where it is seen, like in America, for example, the more educated country of where women are more educated, that they do tend to go more toward career and less toward like something like childbearing. So in the mind of such an individual where that thing is actually very important, then that education, which may lead to that result, I can see could be like a very concerning thing for them.
What are they concerned about, though? What are they so concerned if that woman decides that she wants to not have kids or whatever? Why does that bother them so much?
Because of the social framework that they exist in. Just like from the movie in Udupi, when you went to Udupi and you talked to the, I don't know, the lady there, and you asked her, I have this thing in my notes because I thought that was one of the funnier scenes in the movie. For me, it was funny, where she was saying that yes, women should be educated. She like conceded, and then she said, but maybe not in all the values.
Well, yeah, I know the line. Yeah, so she said the Arti Ketrapal, who's an actress who was with us, she said to the lady, so you agree that a girl child should be educated? The lady said yes. And she said, and then after she's married, she should be allowed to go out of the house and do different things. She says, no, I don't say she should go out of the house. If there's a need to go out of the house, she can go out of the house. And my point to her is that I said to her, yeah, but who decides? Right. That's my point. So the point is whether, so could you imagine an idea that like a grown woman should not go out of her house unless there's an absolute necessity for her to go out of her house?
I see that as sounding very strange to me, growing up in this society with our particular standards. If I were to grow up in another society with a different set of standards, maybe it wouldn't seem as strange to me. It would just be another day in the life. And that's kind of what, like, I guess what I'm indicating. When you inhabit two social worlds, like, are we like how, I'm in this social world and I'm trying to influence this one because I think this one isn't as good or isn't as helpful or is as harmful. That's what I'm.
No, but if you, so the question I asked her was, I didn't pass judgment on it.
Right.
I'm not passing judgment on it. I'm saying who decides?
That's a very good question.
Who decides? So the point is that it's very much the men who decide, and that's the system. And so patriarchy is not about men or women. It's just a system. It's a structure. And it's often supported by men, and it's also very often supported by women, because within the culture, there sometimes is even the term is used, cultural carriers, and so in a way they become the police for those whatever ways they are. Right. And my hunch is, and I'd love to hear what other people think, is that the reason that that is often the case is because in any community, whether it's a football team or a society or whatever, you will do behaviors and continue to do behaviors that you are appreciated for.
Right. Absolutely.
And so if you are appreciated for, keeping a grip on the way that we want it to be, then that will be reinforced, even if that same thing is hurting you. Potentially.
Right.
Mahatma Prabhu's internet is pretty much okay again. So Gurudev, what do you have? What do you have for us?
I just wanted to say one thing. It's kind of taking off where I left. I like to think about these things in relation to what Prabhupada did. At least, the first things Prabhupada did was, the cars are going this way, so let's just turn them a little bit to the right. We're not going to stop them and turn them back or destroy the car. So Prabhupada's analyzing the culture and going, okay, this is the culture. So it is. This is what it is. So at least if you girls and boys are living together, okay, that's okay, but you should get married. Okay, let's tweak that a little bit. And you girls, you shall be married, but if you want to be brahmacharini, that's fine. We can tweak that. We'll create a brahmacharini ashram. Like, why not? That's what you want to do. And you young boys, you want to dedicate your life. Okay, we'll give you sannyas. You really shouldn't get it till you're like 60. But, we have a mission, and so we'll mess around with it a little bit. It didn't seem that he was so, at least initially, concerned about anything cultural-wise other than let's do what works. And then, the dhoti kurta, is that a controversy? All of a sudden that became a controversy. I don't know how that became. And Prabhupada said, well, I never told you to wear a dhoti. You asked me if you could wear one. So it was So, and then I wrote a letter to Prabhupada and I said, well, we're no longer going on Sankirtan in Western dress because we find that if you go out like a monk, it works. And Prabhupada said, all right, if you feel more, this is his exact words, if you feel, this is really funny, you feel more comfortable wearing a dhoti, that's fine. And it's true. Some devotees, like, they don't want to look like everybody else. They want to look like a devotee. They want to walk down the street and like you get people staring at them. And that's their comfort zone. And they think that's the best way for me to spread Krishna consciousness. So that's what Prabhupada, if you feel more comfortable wearing, who feels comfortable wearing a devotee? You're going out to the store to buy a banana, you take your dhoti off, put on a baseball hat, cover your Sikh t-shirt and pants and buy a banana. We see it all the time, isn't it? Because you feel uncomfortable wearing something that looks like a diaper, and have people stare at you like you're from another planet.
I just want to say amen to that. I do feel embarrassed wearing a diaper.
And so Prabhupada's saying, if you feel more comfortable wearing a dhoti, like whatever, it's like, I thought that was the most interesting letter I ever got. So we had to remember Prabhupada's practical. He's super pragmatic. And then later on, he started talking about varnashram. Nobody during Prabhupada's lifetime had any clue what that meant, and I have a little joke. I'm going to make a video on this. Sometimes devotee will say, Prabhu, we're trying to have a Vedic marriage. And I'll say, oh my God, don't do that. That's not going to work for you, So, this idea of Westerners being Vedic is a little like, problematic sometimes, Okay, be Vedic, but don't be too Vedic because you'll like end up a little bit of a monster, trying to be like this Vedic something that you're not.
What does it even mean anyway? I mean,
yeah, exactly. It means whatever you think it means in your immaturity as a bhakta, and then you're trying to be what you've defined as Vedic, which could be anything, and then you end up being this like weird entity who ends up like telling their parents they're demons and you're never going to talk to them, and all your friends you tell them they're going to hell, and et cetera, and you give these amazingly fanatical racist lectures on the Sunday feast. And I have my little jokes about this. I call them Bhakta Burfi. 3 things you talk about on the Sunday feast. We didn't go to the moon. Women are less intelligent, and pick your other third favorite thing. So, I something that really got me thinking about this is I read a story that Lord Ramachandra found a Shudra reading the Vedas and he killed him because he was afraid that if that Shudra got the Vedas, it would be misunderstood. And right after I read that, I was thinking, oh my God, I see this happening all over ISKCON. People completely misunderstanding Prabhupada and like that. So, trying to be Vedic is a little dangerous, but trying to be a pure devotee is a little simpler and easier. So that's just a personal concern for me when people are got to be Vedic. It's not in. Then we have people saying like what it says in scriptures is way more. You must give way more precedence than what Prabhupada said. Like here's the verse, but what Prabhupada said in the purport, that is not the pramanam, not the highest. Like, whoa, wait a minute, where's this coming from? This is a whole new idea. So, we're having to adjust to this, but this is not something we had to adjust to during Prabhupada's time, at least not my experience, not much of it. We weren't like confused, Prabhu Mataji, this, that. It wasn't so confusing, although it wasn't so great for women after a while. I recognize that. But, for most devotees who've been around 10, 20, 30 years, they're just not that Vedic. Like go house to house to all your devotee friends and, go in their house. How Vedic is their house? What are they wearing? What are they eating? He's wearing a t-shirt and cutoffs and eating pizza, most likely, and a salad, right? And ice cream, yeah. Prabhu, is that a Vedic salad or does it have curd in it? If this doesn't have curd, I can't eat it, So I don't want to undermine Vedic and like that. Which some people may think I'm doing.
What I'm hearing from you is that Prabhupada was pragmatic and he did what worked. And I think that's what I'm also hearing from Ravinol. Like we have to use our common sense and let's do what works. That's what I'm hearing. I'm just reflecting what I think that I'm hearing.
Yeah, 100%.
And my response to that is like, duh. But B, and this is where it gets a little tricky for me in my thinking. Something is working in my frame of reference, in my world of faith. And when I try to import what works for me in my world of faith into another social world, it may just create chaos in another social world in the name of elevating it or doing good for it, et cetera, then it just ends up creating more chaos than it does actually helping the situation. And I think the ex-tennis star in the movie was Shika
Ubra, yeah.
So she brought this point up, like, okay, if you empower the individual woman, it doesn't really help her because she's got to take that empowered individualism back to her community and she'll be shunned or criticized and ridiculed. So you really have to empower the community. And that sounds like a really big, epic project to like uplift the whole community. I can barely uplift my house, what to speak of a whole community. And so that's where the dub for me gets more blurred. I appreciate the effort to want to elevate a particular social world that's struggling because of lack of whatever. In this case, just basic human regard for women and little girls in this particular instance. But, I got my own stuff over here in America that's really, really heavy. And am I really going to go through the endeavor to try to import these other values and create perhaps a greater chaos in the name of good? And I'm sorry to give this example. It's just the first example that came into my head, but I don't even know if I should say it. But anyway, the example is like America in the name of democracy going into these other countries that to instill democracy. And I didn't keep up with, I was in ashram when these Iraqi wars were going on. So I really knew nothing about it. But when I was seeing the images of like destroyed cities and so on, I'm like, I wonder how they appreciate the, installment of democracy into their countries, where all their houses are blown up and their cities are destroyed and decimated. But that was all in the name of importing what we thought was valuable to in the name of elevating another social world. So that's where the dub part gets a little bit, it gets nuanced and it gets blurry, it gets messy. And I can totally understand why someone like the lady in Udupi is just like she was like taken aback by your question. Like, well, what about what she wants to do? That was your question to her. What about what the girl wants to do? And she was taken aback by that. And she said her specific words was that in India, as if we didn't know this, in India, it's not about me. That was her response to you. And I thought that whole exchange was kind of funny. That like, of course it's not about me. So this is where do what works, duh, absolutely. But what works, then that's the part that we're likely to get into disagreements. That's the part where you're likely to see this division come up between conservative or liberal, traditional or progressive. That's when it comes to answering that question, what works, that's where the division comes up. So it's more of a statement, but I wanted to hear a response to this.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really good point. I acknowledge it completely. I think I was very sensitive to this point because I didn't, or at least I tried very much not to go there with a certain idea of how it should be. And the point is that, you see, you have to ask the people, and that was my intention from the beginning. So I'm not, it's their words. Like, we're hearing from real people in their own words about their own experience. So maybe you could argue that even prior to me going there, already some outside influence is there that is changing things. But if that's the case, that's already happening anyway. Like, it's not like we're going to stop it. So certainly it was something that I was conscious of, that I'm not suggesting that we should go there and that education should lead to just a big consumer rat race type society where people move away from villages into towns. So that's what I'm saying. Our mind races ahead to all of the things that we think are going to happen. I feel at the end of the day, when we talk about what works, are we doing that in the context of involving the people that it affects in the conversation? Because if we are, then it's far more likely it will work, and it's far less likely that we're going to get it wrong because they are involved in the conversation. So then we would be imposing our ideas on them to tell them that they're wrong.
There was one thing. There was one interview you had with, and I forget the question. You were asking this guy. He looked like he was about 30 or 35, and he was kind of like cool. And you're
I
asking
didn't
him a
read that.
question
I
about,
didn't read
will this work? And he said something like, if it
if it's
works, it works.
authentic.
Yeah, it's just like it's a, yeah. If it's gonna work, hello, it works. So you don't even have to ask the question because the best man will win. So what was the question you asked him?
It was, if I remember, if I think it's the same section that Jai Jagannath's thinking. Was it up on a water tower, up on a roof somewhere? Is it? Do you
Maybe.
remember? So I said to him, he said something about whatever is authentic will something like that. Whatever is real will work. And I said, yeah, but some people say that what's authentic is that men rule the world and women should just get in their place, and that's how it is. And he said, well, if that's authentic, that will be the way it is. And if it's not, it will change. So, whether I suppose it's that dilemma, isn't it? That we have the ability to try and influence things and to shape our own futures, but we also accept that there are bigger things at play as well. And ultimately water will always find its level, Yeah.
What worked 50 years ago really well, even in theory, it could work today, but it can't because we don't think that way. But in answer to Jai Jagannath's question, I was also thinking, if you educate enough girls over time, the culture in the village is going to change because it's just the girls are, taking a different role. And then you've seen that video about the women, I think it's in Africa, they just took over the village because the men were like just lazy. And they were controlling them, and they're like, forget you guys. So, I think those are natural outcomes if you're if you want rights without responsibilities, the women are sooner or later going to just go, okay, this is like too much.
And it's a point, on the point earlier about choice, is like presuming that all women will suddenly, abandon their families and all of that. I mean, that is also a massive presumption, like women are incredible. They'll be, if they are working, they'll also always be thinking about their other responsibilities and everything else. And it's incredible and it's difficult, and it's really difficult to try and be juggling both those things. But if that's what they choose to do, then it's up to the partnership and the two people who are in the partnership to figure out what is right for them, and are they managing it? And maybe then they have to change, and maybe one of them starts to work less or whatever. Like it's adaptive, like Mahaprabhu's point earlier about adapting. And also there was a movement in India of young women who were kind of speaking out because in the universities in India, in the big cities, there's hostels. So if they come from rural places and they stay in the hostels, like halls of residence or whatever, there was this thing from the authorities, if you like, of the universities, that the girls have to be in by a curfew time, whatever that time is, but the boys don't. And you could argue, well, that's just protection, right? Safety. But the argument they were making is well, it's not protection, it's control. Because if we don't get back by the curfew time, you lock the gate. So now I'm out in the street on my own. So how is that? You know what I mean? It's basically obey and do what you're told. We're telling you it's about protection, and maybe there's part of that is there. But actually, it's the idea that no, as a woman, you do not disobey. You toe the line. You get in the box and do, and then maybe we will respect you. That's the thing. There's conditions upon which we will respect you. And it's a very interesting point that came up many times as well. People say, oh, of course we respect women. We have women Davies. And so this is a very interesting point too. And I think we do this in the West as well. If you're a woman and you're perfect, then we will respect you. And if you're not perfect, then we are fair game for us to rip you to pieces if we want to, because you're not perfect. And so the interesting thing about that was me and my wife were sitting down talking about what lessons how we would try and teach our boys to respect women. And one of the things my wife said, which I thought it blew my mind, was she said, we have to teach them that girls are not perfect. They are flawed and they will make mistakes. And they are deserving of kindness, compassion, and forgiveness. So we have this idea, don't we, let's be honest, in our movement, of what a woman should be. And if she's not like that, what are the words we use? Degraded, low, on and on. We know how we say. So they're just human beings, just like anybody else, but struggling along in the mature world, trying to do their best, right? And that's an interesting thing, isn't it? If you're a woman, if you don't dress right, you don't talk right, you don't sit right, you don't do this right, you don't do that right, then it's fair game to just, pull you apart. Whereas we're so much more forgiving of men. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah. I have quite a pressing question. We're approaching 2 hours and we should round up quite soon, gentlemen, but just something which is coming up for me here. We're living in this current time, especially I think last year with all of its events really exacerbated this phenomenon that there's a distinction between someone's circle of concern and their circle of influence. Okay. And I'm here listening to this discussion and having the experience that so much of this, of so much of what we're discussing here is completely out of my circle of influence. Completely. But yet it's entering very strongly and powerfully now into my circle of concern. And we have about 50 people that are with us right now. And there's something which is drawing them. And I'm kind of wondering, as a sort of a broader question, like, with the internet, suddenly everyone's circle of concern is like the entire world and everything that happens within it. And yet most people's circle of influence is minuscule, And so my question here would be, in terms of everything that we are discussing, in terms of this situation in India that these girls are facing, like, who should actually have an opinion on this? Like, should we all have an opinion on this? Because I feel, to be honest, in this particular Sangha, in this present moment, I feel wholly unqualified to have an opinion. Firstly, because my spiritual master is here and he's like, light years ahead of me, and Ravinol Prabhu, you're at the center of this thing. If you didn't make the movie, nothing would have happened. And, Jai Jagannath Prabhu is always thinking about so many things and very senior and qualified. And I feel like, what is the point of my opinion, And so for many people out there, so this is the question. Who should be having an opinion, really? If they're not able to change anything about it, like, what practical utility is there in having an opinion about something that we have no power to change?
And I just say, just answering that, this goes back to the same question I was asking earlier about what is a call to action for an individual like me? Like, how is this supposed to impact me, and how am I supposed to respond to that? Or there must be some intention.
Yeah, so I'll tell you. So, first of all, Prabhu, don't think this is a film about girls in India. That's the first thing. That's just one aspect of it. It affects every single one of us in the deepest way, because we live in this world and we're having interactions and relationships between men and women. So it's hugely within your sphere of influence, not to solve the issues of those girls in India, but to think and consider how, how this may impact you, the bigger issues in your own dealings with your friends and family, your community, and how you yourself analyze and are aware of your own thinking and your own actions, and also what is happening around you. And perhaps, it may inform possibly how you behave or how you try and support others who are in your own life. So yeah, there's the issue that's over there, but there's a much bigger issue which is permeating all of our lives. And so that's my wish with the film, was twofold. One, that everyone who watched it would not externalize the issues, and in the worst case scenario think, I'm going to be a bit exaggerating here, but oh, look at those poor third world girls struggling in some strange alien culture to me. That's externalizing it, right? So but internalize it and see how do these issues, how are they relevant in my own life? So that's the micro that I would ask. And obviously, if you're a man, within that, of course, is, you know, you don't have to tell anybody about it. You don't have to talk about it. You know, just think about it. You know, wow. Well, what are my views deep down about women, and where do they come from? And are they good? Are they? Do I feel good about them? Are they nourishing and healthy for me? And are they potentially? How does that impact on the people? And how will that impact my relationships that I have or I'm going to have? And then on a macro scale, I happen to be involved with my work in social investment, social impact. That's my entire world with my work, and so I want to influence the people who are spending billions of pounds on educating girls, for example, to involve within that a component that works with boys and men to just plain and simple, just become more gender equitable, just to be more supportive of the women in their communities, to progress. And like I said earlier, you know, at the top of the cake is this, you know, wonderful opportunity for spiritual realization and all of these things. There are other layers within that cake that, you know, some of this work can help.
That last little bit that you just said about how you're involved with these like social institutions to help, that gives me a lot more context about the sort of story that you shared with us with Road to Vrindavan. And yeah, because like now I was having a conversation with you with, you know, you're a devotee, I'm a devotee. We have very shared social experience within that devotee frame of reference. But now you have this whole other element that you just revealed to me that helps me to give a greater understanding of where you're coming from. And I think that was the heart of what I'm saying gets messy in my head, that I don't really have the full context of the social world that people inhabit. And so I don't actually rush to conclusions. I actually am very apprehensive about everything. So I end up not doing anything and getting criticized for it. So I'm just like, I don't know. I'm gonna just wait because it seems really complicated, and I don't want to rush anything this way or that way.
But I would say, I mean, not that you've asked me, so forgive me, but don't be afraid to make a mistake.
I'm not afraid to make a mistake,
you know,
but
whatever
the mistakes I've made in the past have got me blasted. So.
Okay.
Can I say something in addressing Chronavatar that I think it's just taking off where Ravi ended and expanding it, because I would have said exactly the same thing. When you're educated about an issue you didn't know about, it definitely affects you, and it affects decisions you're going to make and your awareness. So it could never not help you. And as you grow in life, you'll realize that you made a decision because, 10 years from now, because you saw this film and it brought awareness. And I want to give a very graphic example of this. In America, we have the Child Protection Office, and I was invited to attend their seminar. And one of the things they described was symptoms of children who've been abused, physically, verbally, or sexually, and or just neglected by their parents. And you see them; they don't look healthy. They have marks. They're not clean. Their clothes are dirty. And you understand there's something wrong with their parents. And when they said that, I thought, oh my God, I was in this situation about a year ago, and I didn't even, I looked at them and said, something strange, but I wasn't educated enough to put it into perspective. As soon as I heard the CPO, I was like, oh, and I was telling my wife, there's so many symptoms by which we can understand if someone's abused that I had no idea. And even her as a woman was surprised when I mentioned a few things, because you'd think as a mother they would be sensitive. So even she didn't know. The other thing I want to add, which is kind of like the icing on the cake, is that early in the movement, not so early, but in the mid-70s, one devotee committed suicide. And one of our godbrothers said, I think he said to my wife or daughter or someone, he said, I wish that I was a little more sensitive to understand what was going, like looking at him and seeing, but I didn't understand because maybe I was too immature. So, you know, and I read this book and they said the number one, this is statistical research, the number one qualification for a team member is sensitivity. Like I can look at your face, Jai Jagannath, and I go, say something. I don't think you like what I said, you know, because I can see it in your face. You're that sensitive to one another. So I think education, films like this, if you allow it to make you more sensitive and aware, it is going to manifest, even though you don't need to know how right now, but you're going to do something in your life and you're going to realize, oh, that's why I did it, because of this awareness. So, you know, you don't have to know right now how it's going to help, but you'll be more sensitive to the plight of women, and you'll just, I became extremely sensitive to the plight of women in ISKCON because they would tell me things that, you know, I kind of knew, but then they tell me, and my daughter would tell me things, you know, because she said, oh, it would be so good if there were no men, like for a day, because then I could just, you know, walk down the street without fear, and, you know, I can go shopping, I don't have to look around, you know. It's like, you know, when I heard that, I was like, oh, what a perspective as a man. You know, I don't have that perspective. And then I've done Sankirtan in San Francisco back in the day in the gay areas, and the men were trying to pick up on me and grabbing me in, you know, places you don't want to be grabbed. And I was like, oh, okay, now I understand what it's like to be a woman. I had to have that experience, because the women say, men are lusty, this, yeah, well, you're just exaggerating. And then they were doing it to me. It's like, okay. So these things are edifying, and then that helped me become more sympathetic. And when there were problems in temples, I would often do things that the leaders, the men, not ill-intentioned, but they just weren't aware of. That's my 2 cents.
Karuna, can you read these last 2 comments? They're very encouraging for this sort of discussion. I thought it'd be a good place to end.
Absolutely. Last 3 comments, in fact. Well, there's actually a few. Okay, so Kamalakshi Radhika says that you can absolutely change things in your circle of influence by supporting and empowering the women in your lives and setting a good example for the men in your lives to do the same. Very much on point. Then Nadia says the culture of the country starts with the culture of one person, which was also wonderful. And then as women, we can look within as well as come together as women to see how we can encourage the men in our lives to come together like these gentlemen have done to address the issue of women's empowerment. How can we hold space for, or allow space for them to have such discussions among themselves? Thank you so much, Kamania. That is absolutely beautiful. And, you know, as we said earlier, we like the entire reason why this podcast exists is because we care about women. Okay? You guys have to understand that. So don't tell us that we're discriminating. And Kamania, we'd love to, Jai and I were, you know, this is in the ether, but we're gonna have a follow-up, and we'd love to have you with us. So just putting that out there right now. Then Kamalakshi Radhika, to end off, in one episode of the Honest Women's podcast, each one of them shared how fortunate they felt that they had men in their lives who supported them, and how much harder their services would be without that. A lot of women don't have that, but conversations like this can help change that culture. All right, I feel like I've been like fully edified and like really well educated, and I'm deeply grateful. Thank you so much. Dear Gurudev, Ravi Prabhu, Jai Jagannath.
Thank you so much. I think you're muted,
Jai,
Jai
you're
Jagannath.
muted.
True, there's something going on. I wanted to also say thank you, and I wanted to make any apologies. I I personally decided to take the more devil's advocate voice in the conversation, just to give you an opportunity to answer some of the questions or thoughts that may come up for a more traditionalist perspective of things.
I think that was good. Thank you for doing that.
And my decision was very conscious to do that, but I just wanted to apologize at the end and say I hope I didn't make any too much discomfort or tension there. And thank you so much. I love the movie. I watched it yesterday in the space that I'm in now, and I very much appreciated the work that you were doing and are doing and continue to do.
Thank you so much. Can I just say, I know we mentioned it at the beginning, but if people, if you haven't seen the film, please go to roadtovrindavan.com. And if you have seen it and you've liked this, I'm looking forward to reading all these comments. I wasn't able to keep up, but it would be great to hear what you thought. So thank you for having me on. Thank you, Mahatma Prabhu. It was nice to have some exchanges with you. Hopefully we can continue to do that. And the same
you
with
you were in Vrindavan in 1997. You said.
You were probably there, yeah.
I was there. I was living there then. Yeah. We just looked different then.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We were at Mangal Arti together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gurudev, I'm sorry we couldn't hear more from you. It's really a shame. You know, if you have more thoughts, like somehow or other, maybe on, I don't know, in a video or something, you could share it with all of us.
Yeah, I can think about it. Yeah. Yeah.
If-
I think
if-
you hit it on the head by saying that you're doing this podcast to help the women. Because, otherwise the men will always blame the women because that's what ego does. And I was going to say also, like when you're asking how can I be affected by this, we all know as members of the movement, we've heard things about women that we didn't hear before we joined that did affect us. And we were trying to imbibe that as truth. It's like you were saying, you just imbibe everything because it's true. And there's no like place in your brain for it because you didn't hear that before. And it kind of floats around and, you don't always know how to manifest it. And sometimes you manifest it in unhealthy ways. One time we were having a problem. I'm trying to find this devotee to apologize to her. I was in 82. We had this huge problem and she was telling me what to do. And I told her to her face, I have made a vow that I will never take advice from a woman. So, that's ISKCON 1982. And people who know me know that's like, I'm not like that. But it just shows what hearing all those classes and so forth have done. And you could imagine how successful my marriage was in that year, since I don't listen to anything a woman tells me.
Yeah.
That marriage didn't work out so well. So I think that those are realities that we are contending with in the Hare Krishna movement and all religious movements that this podcast and others are trying to neutralize because it's subtle. A lot of men don't even realize it. And it comes out in classes and the class givers don't realize it. And I'm looking at it going, you can't say that. And everyone's so used to hearing it, nobody even notices it. And that's sad. So I think this podcast is helping that and will continue to help them.
Thank you for that blessing, Mahatma Prabhu. I was well noted. Well noted.
Go boy. Go boy. You be the man.
Jai Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Bye-bye.
All right. Please just stay on. We're just going to end the broadcast.
Okay.
Thanks, family.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.